So Richard says, good morning. For wholesale, which category should a new seller focus on, since the new seller is gated in most categories? So there's a couple different ways to approach that. I want to answer that question in a couple different ways. So first and foremost, which category? Me personally, I don't think that there's really a category that you should focus on more so than others, right? Obviously, you don't want to go into, gated categories like automotive, for example. That said, for wholesale, obviously, if you're sourcing 10 plus quantity and you're sourcing from a legitimate supplier like, the list in the course, or, even a legitimate supplier that's been vetted on like a wholesale directory or something like that, then in that aspect, you're going to be able to use that invoice to get ungated for that product, assuming it's a legitimate supplier and you order 10 plus quantity of that actual product, right? So it really doesn't matter necessarily which category you go after wholesale wise. Now for other things, I would recommend, just picking and choosing category to category, product to product. Each product's gonna be different. And yes, you're right, you're definitely gonna be gated for a certain amount of things in the beginning. A great way to get, through that is sell a lot of stuff so you can get auto ungated. And a great way to do that is selling a lot of very, very cheap books. So if you haven't checked out the book, module yet, I'd recommend checking that out. You can source books through eFlip or through Zen Arbitrage, but more so I would recommend to get ungated is get a bunch of free books or get a bunch of cheap books, and there's a million ways that I show you how to do that. Not a million, but there's probably like a dozen ways I show you how to do that in that actual module, and then just start selling that as like a side hobby. You might not make much money, if any, right? But you're gonna start ranking your Amazon account to get auto ungated in other things because you're gonna have a lot more sales. It's gonna increase your metrics. Oh, and by the way, it will help you get the buy box in the future at lower prices when you compete against other sellers because you have better seller metrics, you'll get more feedback, etc., okay? So that's excuse me, that's what I'd recommend for that. I'd recommend don't worry about it when you're really sourcing wholesale because you'll be able to get ungated, assuming it's not like a gated category like an automotive, for example. On top of that, also focus on selling a lot of products, and one of the easiest ways that you can get cheap products is books, because like I said, you can get them free a lot of times, and I've showed countless examples in that actual book flipping module to get free books. And on top of that, you can get them very, very cheap even if you decide to pay for them, okay? So I hope that answers your question, Richard. Now, Matt says, good morning. This question I have is in reference to OA and IP infringement claims. So I got an IP claim on an item I bought from Walmart online and sold on Amazon and got a claim. First thing I did was email the person on a burner just to see if it was a legitimate email, which it was since they responded. So I proceeded to upload the Walmart receipt and plan of action. I've gotten rejected 3 times. Do I just keep trying? What exactly should I be putting in my plan of action? Am I missing something? Appreciate the Q&A videos. Thanks. So great question, Matt. So in my experience, honestly, and I actually took this section out of 5.0. I think it was in 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0 versions of the course. So I took the IP claims, the copyright claims, all that stuff in or out of 5.0 because I moved more so away from recommending reselling cashback products and coupon products back on Amazon, which is usually, not always, but usually about 95% of the time where people get IP, infringement claims or copyright claims or anything like that. So I didn't necessarily see a full need for it in this course because, like I said in the past, I'm trying to make it as streamlined as possible to get you guys the best results in the shortest time possible. So because you said you did it on a retail site and you bought it from Walmart, you should be in the clear with a lot of things, right? Ultimately, though, I have been seeing that with everything with like the coronavirus going on right now, it is a little bit more difficult to get IP claims, copyright claims, even like when you're going after something like where you need to send an invoice in to prove authenticity if they ask for it before you even get a claim or anything like that. Just if like Amazon sends you an email like, hey, we suspect this, it's taking a lot longer, number one, and it seems like it's taking a lot more tries. I don't know if that's because of the coronavirus and they have less people on staff. I don't know exactly what it is, but it seems like currently within the past month or two, it's been a little bit more difficult. And I have seen a number of different people have that issue. And, Amazon, even if you send it in to kind of keep rewording your emails to Amazon, they seem to kind of just be like, it's almost like an automated message a lot of times, more so than it used to be, okay? That's totally fine. So in that aspect, I'd recommend checking out those videos, which it sounds like you already have because you said that you've emailed from a burner, which is something I recommend in one of those videos. So if you need a refresher on those videos, I think all of those are on my YouTube channel. If you can't find them at just comment below on this video or shoot me an email or whatever, comment in the Facebook group or whatever, and I will make sure that you get the links to those videos directly that can help you. So I would recommend just following that process a lot like you did, right? You said you've applied 3 times, or you've emailed Amazon 3 times, I think, and gotten rejected 3 times, you said. So in that aspect, I would just keep rewording, keep sending the email in, and then eventually you're gonna get accepted. You just kind of need to show A, that you're not going away, because you can reply and, you know, continuously forward that email in and your appeal as many times as possible. And B, you also need to kind of explain to them the situation, because it's probably just getting auto rejected by the computer or software or something, and somebody, or even if somebody's physically looking at it, they're not necessarily, you know, reading into it or looking at it in full. They're just assuming, because it's difficult for them and it's not fully outlined, I guess, like as streamlined as possible. So a couple recommendations there. I'd recommend that A, you said you've emailed them, which it sounds like they haven't responded. Also, which it was, since they did respond, actually. So they did respond. So if they're not willing to play ball, then you need to deal with Amazon. Obviously, the easiest way is to get them to play ball. Just explain to them where you sourced it, that you didn't know that there was an IP, that you were infringing on their intellectual property, even though you're not, because you're allowed to sell it. But I would just try to play ball with them. If they cooperate, great. Try to get them to take down the appeal and tell them you didn't know, and you won't sell their brand or their product anymore. Especially if it's like a big branded company or a big name, which it sounds like it could be because you bought it from Walmart, then they should be willing to play ball in a lot of aspects. A lot of times with big brands, they'll just file off like everybody that's ever sold it in the past like couple months. They'll hit them with an IP claim and tell Amazon, and because of that, Amazon just files claims against everybody. So they're more likely to be playing to play ball with you if they're a big brand. Okay, so that's the first thing. I'd try to deal with the seller. Second thing is get yourself an IP Chrome extension. So people like IP Alert, but you have to pay for IP Alert. So what I personally recommend is Scan Unlimited's Chrome extension, because it will literally show you if that brand has a history of an IP alert in the past. So get Scan Unlimited, it's free. Obviously, I love the software for sourcing wholesale, but you can also just get the free Chrome extension, and then it will literally show you on the detail page of every product listing if that has a history of IP claims on that brand, right? That'll save you a lot of hassle, but it sounds like since you're sourcing from retail websites, this shouldn't be a major issue for you. It's rare, in my opinion, not just in my personal experience, but also from a lot of students that source retail. I don't see it that much, and I don't think a lot of other people do as well. So after that, the next recommendation that I would do is just keep rewording it to Amazon, right? So make sure that Amazon knows if you already try to deal with the seller and they're not willing to play ball. Obviously, get yourself, the Scan Unlimited Chrome extension so you can avoid this more so in the future, regardless of what business model you choose. And also, number 3 is make sure you reword in your email that you sourced it from Walmart. You, most importantly, were not gated for that on Amazon, right? Because by saying that, I'm like giving you the finger when I'm doing this right here. By saying that you weren't gated and you didn't know when you checked it on Amazon, that's basically subtly implying that Amazon made the mistake and your Seller Central did not notify you that that was a gated brand or that was a gated product. So A, say that you sourced it from a legitimate site, Walmart, right? So they know your sourcing chain and it's not like you're getting it from a random place. Number 2, make sure that you say that you weren't gated for it. You checked on Amazon via Seller Central, so it implies that, Amazon was a little bit at fault. Don't say that, obviously, but just imply it, right? You checked and you weren't gated, so you assume that you could sell it, right? And then number 3, tying off that second point where you weren't gated, is say something along the lines of, because you weren't gated, you assume that you weren't infringing on anybody's intellectual property or infringing on their brand rights or their brand authority, right? And because you weren't ungated, it indicates that that brand did not go through brand registry on Amazon. And the whole point of brand registry on Amazon is so that people don't infringe on people's brands or infringe on people's products, or the whole reason that you're supposed to file brand registry and go through that process is to save Amazon time, number 1, in the back end with their reps, and also so that people know and sellers know not to sell that brand. So this brand, whatever they are, that obviously sells on Walmart, has gone around the brand registry process, and just filed off IP claims without going through brand registry. So by doing all those things, one, with the Chrome extension, you're ensuring that you're probably going to avoid most of them in the future. Number two, you're basically subtly implying that Amazon was a little bit at fault because Seller Central didn't tell you that you were gated for that product and that you couldn't sell it, right? So that you assume that you could, okay? And number three, you're also implying and kind of saying at the same time that the seller just filed a bunch of IP claims which wasted a bunch of Amazon reps' time, and they have foregone going through the brand registry process and skip that altogether. So Amazon's probably gonna see that in the future, again, with that same brand, right? So all three of those things are really gonna give you the best bet to get and kind of catch the attention of an Amazon seller rep or seller support rep when they actually see your email, and then they're gonna take it more seriously when they see those things, right? So ultimately you're trying to bypass the software, bypass, getting through that first initial process, and then get somebody that can actually help you and look at your case to actually look at your case and then take the IP claim off of your account. I went in a bunch of different directions there. I really hope that makes a lot of sense. If you need to, just rewind the video, kind of rewatch it, and then hopefully all that will make sense, right? And then if you get rejected again, it's just a simple rinse and repeat process at that point, right? Reword the email saying all of those same things and then resend it again, because at that point it's just a numbers game and you can appeal as many times as you want, okay? I hope that helps, man. It sounds like you only have one, so the good news is, if you're sourcing retail products, it's very, few and far between on sites like Walmart and stuff like that. Get yourself the IP, the Scan Unlimited IP free Google Chrome extension so that you avoid that in the future with a lot of things. And then ultimately, if I would just keep sending it in, but I really wouldn't worry about it too much. They come off your account every 6 months anyway, so it's really not a big deal. And you probably, if you're sourcing retail products, it's not really something that you need to worry about. Okay, so that was a little bit long. I'll try to go through the rest of them a little bit faster, but let me get a sip of coffee here. So Hernan says, wholesale arbitrage for people outside the US. How can I find suppliers who don't ask for a reseller's permit? In Mexico, that document doesn't exist. Thanks, Brian. So in that aspect, two things with that, Hernan. I would say number one, you need a wholesale permit or a reseller's license, or there's a million different names for it, depending on the state that you're trying to get it in, or there might even be, that document in Mexico just under a different name, right? So maybe call up, your local government or whatever it is and ask if that's something that you can get. I'm sure there's some kind of document that basically shows that you're either a sole proprietor or I think they call it a sole trader in the UK. So there's probably some kind of document that maybe you're not aware of, but if not, I don't live in Mexico, so maybe if not, then what I'd recommend is, secondly, if you can't find that, or you've searched or you've called, your government and there's no way to kind of get around that, then what I'd recommend is just form an LLC in the US in, a state that has tax benefits. I'm not gonna recommend a specific state. You can just Google that and figure out which one it is. There's a bunch of them. I think like Texas comes to mind. I think Florida comes to mind. I think, just Google them. I think Delaware comes to mind. Maybe, like I said, there's like 7 to 10 of them, I think. So just Google that, form an LLC, maybe Rhode Island's another one. Form an LLC in one of those states in the US. It's only gonna cost you, if you do it through like LegalZoom, it's really only gonna cost you like $150 to like $300 depending on the state, but just go with one that's like a cheaper state, like $150, and then you're $150 into your LLC. You formed an LLC to protect yourself, which is what I always recommend eventually anyway for resellers. So you knock that out of the park, and it's relatively cheap at $150. Plus, if you're scaling up wholesale to any certain degree, you're probably, gonna start a legitimate business anyway and be selling a lot and making a lot of money with that. So you probably want an LLC in the future anyway, right? So form an LLC in one of those states, and then with that LLC, you can get a reseller's permit. I believe there's a section toward the end of the course that shows you how to get a reseller's permit. If you need me to point you in that direction, just comment on this and I'll point you in that direction. But that's what I'd recommend. If you can't find it in Mexico, which you probably can, but I could be wrong. Like I said, you would know better than me. Then go with an LLC, form an LLC, and use that LLC to get a reseller's permit in the US, okay? If that doesn't work or you don't want to do that, then just pick a different business model. There's a bunch of other business models that you can do from Mexico, right? So you can also probably get, coupon sites or cashback sites or even liquidation and order it to you and then resell back on Amazon Mexico or, other reselling, marketplaces that you like maybe eBay Mexico or something like that, if that exists. I think it does, back in yours. Or you can just use a prep center for the US. One of the best ways, and I have a couple students in Mexico that I know of firsthand that do reselling books back on Amazon US with a prep center, and it's super easy because while they're charged a slight fee per product, it's only like a 50 cents to $1 fee per book, and then your margins are a lot, right? So that you can afford to take that like $1 or 50 cents off the book margin because your margins are going to be like 20 bucks to like $100 sometimes on a book, and then just ship it into FBA and let FBA US store all your book inventory, and then you're just gonna make good money on those books and it doesn't really cost you a lot, right? So those are the best options for you. Like I said, check Mexico. If not, then get an LLC and get a reseller's permit in the US. Do it that way. Or if not, just pick a different business model that doesn't require you to get a reseller's permit, although liquidation obviously would as well. So I hope that helps and answers your question, Hernan. So Jacob says, would now with Amazon not accepting shipments be a good time to start online arbitrage, specifically the retail website / bulk module? I'm trying to scale up. It seems daunting with shipping FBM. I completely agree. That's the reason I stopped doing wholesale for a while, this past like 2 months, because everything with the coronavirus, like I don't want to ship hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of products every week out FBM. That sounds horrible in my opinion. So I do still ship some retail products out FBM, and I do every once in a while ship a book or two out FBM, but I've shipped retail products and books into FBA recently, within like the past week or two. It is currently 6/17 at the time of recording this video. So they're opening back up, right? And they've received my books. They've also received some of my retail products. Now, I don't think that they've announced it publicly, but I know currently, like I'm in PA. I don't know what state you're in, Jacob. Currently, I think PA is behind a lot of states with a lot of things. So I think it depends roughly what prep centers you're sending it to and what states that are receiving it, right? So I think like PA, like I said, is behind the 8 ball from like a lot of other states. I think we're turning green at the end of June, if I'm not mistaken. So, by the time you're watching this, it'll only be like a week or so, or maybe like 2 weeks max by the time everything fully opens, even though, like I said, they've already received some of my products, both books and retail products. So the short answer is no, I don't think it's a bad time at all. I think it's a great time. I think there's a lot of opportunity because there's a lot less sellers in FBA right now because of, everything with the virus. And also it seems like they're opening back up both, privately, but then they will open up publicly very, very soon, right? Every state pretty much, except I think Arizona currently, is the only ones that are like, or every state is like opening up relatively soon. All right, so Chuck says, still having IP issues on things I bought from 888 lots. I've emailed the person that filed the complaint 3 times, and they only responded once asking for information, and I have sent it to him twice. I've tried sending the invoice to Amazon on several occasions, rewording it each time, but keep getting rejected. What's the next step I should take? I've got over 50 items left and they don't seem to sell on other platforms. So I remember this one, Chuck. I remember talking to you about this through email. That's definitely a bummer that they're not, necessarily selling on other platforms. I would recommend just continue to try to sell them on other platforms first and foremost while you're trying to get, the IP claim off. Next, I would recommend, it sounds like I personally haven't myself had any issues with 888 lots, right? Both with, like sizes, like I know you had a sizing issue with 888 lots. I've never had that issue myself. And also I've never had an issue with an IP claim or a copyright claim myself, shipping items into FBA and selling them on Amazon. But it sounds like honestly you've had some issues with 888 lots. So I would say just stop sourcing first and foremost 888 lots for Amazon. So there's a million other ways obviously to sell. So I know specifically you're going through the retail module right now and doing like Source Mogul. So a lot of opportunity with that. So you're probably not even focused on the 888 lots. So that's what I'd say, like just avoid 888 lots in the future because it sounds like they've been giving you some issues with some stuff that you're selling on Amazon. I would recommend referencing back to what I said initially with Matt. because that answer is kind of the same for you, I would recommend to hit home all those points that I said to Matt. So like I said, make sure that you tell them that you weren't ungated or you weren't gated for it. So that implies that it's kind of on them a little bit. Also imply that, that seller, I don't know what that like present tense of that word is, but that seller has foregone and bypassed, that's probably a better one, bypass the brand registry, so it kind of implies that the seller's at fault as well. And then just keep providing the invoice showing that you've got it. Just make sure that that invoice is itemized, and I think you've gone through that process as well. So that's my best recommendation for you. And then just keep sending it. I think you said you've sent it a couple of times. Just keep sending it, right? Just keep annoying Amazon's reps until somebody looks at it and approves you, because you aren't at fault with it. You just need to prove authenticity, prove that you didn't intend to infringe on anybody's intellectual property, and also prove that Amazon told you could sell it, and also prove that the seller bypassed brand registry and they're at fault for it, right? Just to recap, you're not saying any of these things directly, it's implying it. Just revisit what I said to Matt. That same exact thing applies to you, man. But you'll get them ungated, or you'll sell them on other platforms, just kind of like the shoes. I know it's a bummer, but I'd say just focus on scaling up Source Mogul and some of those retail products. A lot of opportunity there with those, and then eventually, as you keep sending it in here and there, you'll get it approved, or you'll sell them off on other platforms. So hope that helps, man. Let's move on. I got one more question from last week's one. Let me find it really fast. So Alex says, thanks for this video. I wanted to ask the same question about pre-ordering items from EE, but it has already been answered in this video. I have a follow-up question regarding ordering items from wholesale distributors. What about finding profitable items that are temporarily out of stock? Should I consider ordering those items? So that's a good question. I know people that do that, right? Like I know people that try to order items that are out of stock and kind of time the market, because with wholesale, they say that, not always, and I don't do this myself, but wholesale people usually say you want to either be first to market or last to market. You want to avoid like the middle wave where there's like a lot of competition on the listing, right? So some people do target like sold out and then try to time the market and be last to market with a good profit margin. I don't do that, and I don't necessarily recommend that you do that either, right? It's a good question though. So what I basically do is, the reason you don't want to do that, right, is because you don't know when it's going to be in stock, right? You don't know when it's going to be back in stock, and for that reason, I don't want to, play guessing games and order ahead of time when a lot of things could change on that product listing, right? Somebody might tank the price, and then you're not profitable anymore, and you still have to ship those products in to sell them off and get whatever profit you can, even though you're losing money, right? So, or a lot more people could come on and they might not sell as quickly, and your cash flow might be tied up. Or there's like so many different, factors that could change on the product listing, and you're not 100% sure when it's going to be in stock. Even with EE or any of the wholesale companies, even if, and they don't always do this, but even if they tell you it's expected to be in stock at this date, and you kind of gauge it that way, that changes, right? Every once in a while, that will change, right? So let's say they expect it to be in stock in a month or a couple weeks, that could change and be a couple weeks or a month after that. There's no guarantee that it's going to be in stock at that point. So I would just avoid doing that. What I do personally, and what works best for me, is just sourcing for things that are in stock and looking at the product listing currently, right? Because then it's currently doing that, and you can literally order it into FBA or order it to your location and ship it into FBA, and that you're literally locking that down right now as quickly as possible, so there's less potential for things to change on that product listing. So I hope that answers your question, Alex. Good one. Thank you guys for asking all the questions. I really hope that I helped you out with the answers. If you guys have a question, drop it on this video specifically, and I'll answer it in next week's Q&A.